And back here at home tonight, an Adopt a Highway sign is now raising some eyebrows. Take a look at this. The Satanic Temple of Indiana is adopting a portion of US 421 right near US 32 in Zionsville. Members will now be cleaning up the 2-mile stretch 4 times a year as part of the Crossroads of America program. On the group's website, a chapter leader says, quote, "The cleaning initiative is a great way to get our chapter members involved while giving back to the state."
Magnitude 5.3 earthquake has hit Hanzhong City in northwest China's Shanxi province. The earthquake struck at a depth of 11 kilometers on Wednesday. No casualties or damage have been reported yet by Shanxi or neighboring Sichuan province, but the operation of several rail lines in this area are affected.
In another part of the world, Philippines, thousands of people are being prepared for evacuation as it braces for its most powerful storm this year. Typhoon Mangkhut is being touted as a Category 5 storm and is expected to bring heavy rainfall and flooding along the Philippines' northern coastal provinces. The typhoon is already carrying maximum sustained winds of 205 kilometers per hour, and although the typhoon is 1,000 kilometers away from the archipelago's easternmost island of Samar, the Weather Bureau officials are on high alert. Towns that are expected to be most severely hit are being fortified with relief goods and disaster equipment units. Powerful storms are not uncommon in the Philippines. Every year, this island nation is battered by an average of 20 typhoons, and Mangkhut will be this year's 15th storm.
A nighttime motorcycle ride turned deadly for 2 teens in the most shocking of ways. Authorities say 2 teenagers have died after being buried alive in a sinkhole in Jalan Taman Serdang, Malaysia on September 10th. According to New Straits Times, 17-year-old Muhammad Haikal Hakimi Mohd Noor and 17-year-old Muhammad Haziq Ishaq were riding on a motorcycle around 10 p.m. when they fell into a crumbling road. Bandar Baru District Police Chief Deputy Superintendent Barudin Wariso said the friends did not realize part of the road was collapsed. Serdang Fire and Rescue Department chief told New Straits Times that emergency medical responders and 11 personnel raced to help the victims when they were alerted of the tragic incident. An emergency responder said the team found the motorcycle inside the sinkhole and went to work immediately. The victims' bodies were extracted from the rubble 5 minutes apart and sent for identification.
And as you indicated, the island hardest hit by Olivia was Maui. There were landslides, power outages, and evacuations. The worst of it was in West Maui, where Waihe'e, Honokahau, and Kahana areas were all hit hard. In some cases, residents had to be evacuated. Gina Mangieri joins us now with more. Gina?
I'm here on Lower Hono'api'ilani Highway, where a whole stretch of residents had to be evacuated here between 2 streams where they were trapped by overflowing waters. They helped each other. First responders came and got them out. They hacked away brush in the back to make a pathway through to get out from rushing water that buckled the roads, toppled trees, and just made a mess and a very scary situation. Luckily, no one was hurt, but take a listen to what it was like when witnesses on the ground.
All the neighbors, too. Everybody's come together and help each other out. And like Jared says, every 10, 12 years, we get big water from the mountain, and it comes down, and it runs, and
we know what to expect, so this is not our first rodeo, yeah, so.
Now, we had been expecting this storm overnight, last night, had this happened at night, could the outcome have been much different?
Oh yeah, because it would have been catastrophic. People would be sleeping, and they probably got washed away. Who knows, Who knows? It's a blessing that it did happen during the daytime,
Yeah, it was absolutely crazy. So the rain was kind of coming down, like kind of expected, right?
Right.
And then I just see all my neighbors outside, like I'm in a cul-de-sac, and I see everyone kind of like running around. I'm like, what the heck? And all of a sudden, like out of nowhere, I look across the street where the river is, and just water starts pouring into our cul-de-sac, and everyone's kind of like grabbing stuff and like running around. But cars couldn't leave our community. It is a gated community, and we were kind of stuck here in case we had to evacuate. There's logs and stuff down all over the road.
Now, a lot of people watching may be looking at the blue sky and wondering, gosh, this is happening so far after the rain. Do you see that, where the rain's hit, some time goes by, and the waters are still rising and still creating a search and rescue potential?
Sure, we see this in mountainous terrain, right? It's pretty common. You get the rain, it pretty heavily. It may not be locally, but all that water's got to go somewhere.
Now, that was a representative from FEMA, which happened to have dozens of urban search and rescue and swift water rescue personnel on the islands to help for just such occasions like this. They had a lot of them also city-aged up in Hana, just in case. They were ready to respond. The first responders here, again, the neighbor said it was everyone from police officers to representatives of the fire department to representatives of county maintenance workers coming through and helping, and of course the community helping each other.
The huge storm is now less than 24 hours from the North Carolina coast, where it threatens to bring a deadly storm surge and record amounts of rain, a lot of rain. More than 2.5 million people are under hurricane warnings in the Carolinas, and a state of emergency is in place from Georgia to Maryland.
The National Hurricane Center says North Carolina faces life-threatening, catastrophic, and prolonged flooding. Florence has slowed from a Category 4 to a Category 2 hurricane, but that is still very powerful. Chief weathercaster Lonnie Quinn of our New York station WCBS-TV is tracking this storm. Lonnie, is this storm any less dangerous than before?
You know what? The only thing that has changed, Nora, is the wind speed, okay? It had been up to 140, now it's 110. Is that a good thing? Sure it is. But nothing else has changed. I mean, the outer bands now are just starting to make their way onshore. Look at the threats from this hurricane, all right? And these have remained consistent. As far as storm surge, we're talking about up to 15 feet in spots. I think the general rule is going to be maybe that 6 to 13, but there will be spots that could see 15. Rainfall, 30 inches or more in spots. That could possibly be a record setter for the state of North Carolina and South Carolina. The winds, 105 miles per hour, granted down from where they were, but there's a lot of problems. The biggest problem of all will be duration. Tropical storm conditions, really, from right now all the way through Saturday. If you take a look at the track, this has not changed. It makes its landfall, we think, maybe early in the AM hours of Friday, swoops around, and in terms of that rainfall, I think you could be seeing the records broken. There's a record for North Carolina, 24 inches. We are forecasting up to 30 in spots. Nora?
A real concern tonight over a nuclear power plant and several reactors right here in the region. And in the historic city of Charleston, they're now using loudspeakers tonight on fire trucks to warn people to get out with this new track. ABC's Steve Osensami is there for us.
The panic is for real. Authorities tonight say they'll need to watch this nuclear power plant in North Carolina and 15 other reactors in 3 states, worried they could flood.
This hurricane is bringing some rain and water that we have not seen before in hurricanes.
At Fort Bragg, they're filling sandbags. They're moving helicopters out of the water's way.
Leave as soon as possible.
Fire trucks with loudspeakers are rolling through neighborhoods near Charleston that they worry could be flooded for days. We heard a story over and over again today. Families like the Lees, who had decided to stay, are suddenly leaving town.
As of this morning when it turned, we thought it might be good just with 2 young kids to go ahead and make the trip out.
Ben Pogue and his wife Nina are now leaving too. He's a former local meteorologist, seen here working Hurricane Dennis.
A major player in this storm is going to be the rainfall.
During the last 2 hurricanes, they stayed and watched the water get up to these steps. Tonight, they're leaving for Jacksonville, worried the water gets in the house.
I'm 6'3", and I'm here, and I'm looking right in our first floor.
Even in the highest point in the neighborhood this time, there's a possibility all those cars would flood.
Duke Energy says 3 million customers could be out of power for weeks. The cavalry of power line workers is already on the way.
And Steve Osensami doing this live tonight from Charleston. And Steve, I can tell you the winds are picking up right here in North Carolina tonight. And we see behind you there's some promising signs that people are taking this very seriously where you are as well.
That's right, David. This is the historic district, all boarded up and sandbagged already. Because Charleston is low, flat, and sloped towards the ocean, it only takes a couple inches of rain in a short amount of time to flood these streets. Authorities are warning that when the floodwaters reach 6 inches high, that's enough to knock a person over, and a foot high can sweep your car away.
We're feeling the first outer bands of Florence, and you know, as we've been seeing all day, this storm is enormous, and that storm surge Janice is talking about, just look at this pier. The 9 to 13 foot surge isn't anywhere near here yet. We have almost 24 hours for it to develop, and you can see the pier rocking as it takes these waves. You're talking about a little bit of common sense advice and the simple things. Well, this is the part here in Atlantic Beach, North Carolina, where we start talking about be safe. If you see water, turn around, don't drown. We are already seeing some flooding coming in because of the low-lying areas as you head towards Morehead City behind me. But right now, we are seeing the first of the water starting to surge in. And I talked to a resident a little while ago who told me that he is actually, because of the downgrade of the wind, going to ride it out because his biggest fear, believe it or not, isn't this water you're looking at. It's the flooding inland in Kenson, in New Bern, in Jacksonville, and he fears that should he go inside, he knows the worst part of this storm, as Janice was talking about, is the flooding coming from the extended excessive rainfall as well as the continued surge, and he doesn't want to get trapped inland and not able to get back here now. So really quite amazing conditions that are starting to deteriorate as we get the first parts of the northeastern band that's whipping at us. The waterways, the Coast Guard, earlier this morning before the sun was even coming up and it was light, we were at condition Zulu. That means no boats in, no boats out. The bridge to Atlantic Beach has been closed to any oncoming traffic short of law enforcement or first responders, and we're starting every about 30 minutes to get some of the squalls, the heavier rains, and that's adding to the water on the island, as well as most of this island has wooden poles holding all of the power lines. When I've talked to the chief of police and the fire chief here, they say one of their earliest concerns are the power lines because that restricts first responders' movement should a line go down over a road. They themselves then have to worry about self-preservation as they assist some of the people that stay behind. And you know, when you talk about structural damage, and you can see the water coming up now, the surge, it's actually come up as far as my cameraman Dan and come up on the little ledge we're staying on. We will egress immediately as these conditions begin to get more significant. We had high tide about an hour ago here, so we don't expect it necessarily to come much more, but as the storm comes in, this surge is going to come all past us, and within the next 12 hours, where I am standing will be underwater. The question is, will that pier still be standing, Sandra?
I mean, Griff, we're all looking at this shot with you right now, and if we're just at the beginning here, that's going to get a whole lot worse. Griff, can you see anyone from your position right now? Is there anyone out there?
You know, I'm just taking a look. We saw a few people earlier that had come down that obviously decided to stay behind on Atlantic Beach. They wanted to see it. They got scared. We had a pretty heavy storm about an hour ago, and that drove everyone out. But really, the beach, just to give a little bit of context, about 150 yards yesterday, you could walk halfway down this pier, and people were out here getting a last day of sun, and now it's all the way up to the dunes. They had storms 20 years ago, and they did a lot of sand reclamation to try and build these dunes up, but there's no doubt that these houses and these front porches are going to take a hit well before the full impact of this storm hits here. And, you know, here you can see now, Sandra, look at the surge coming up. This is the kind of stuff that we're talking about coming up, the debris in the water, and this isn't even the barely beginning of Florence's surge coming. That 9 to 13 feet is going to be much, much more serious in the coming hours.
China is being battered by typhoon as well. Typhoon Barijat has made landfall in South China's Guangdong province. Nearly 12,000 people have been evacuated as precaution. The center wind of the 23rd typhoon this year reached 25 meters per second during its landing. Heavy storms and gales are expected as it moves from east to west. Passenger ships were ordered to stop service on the Qingzhou Strait between Hainan and Guangdong, and more than 36,000 fishing boats were called back to port.
There's a new proactive approach to cleaning up red tide debris on our beaches. Crews in Pinellas County, they have now picked up 66,000 pounds of dead fish.
ABC Action News reporter Jasmine Stiles is in Madeira Beach with a look at this new strategy.
There's nothing they can do about the stench, but the hundreds of dead fish washing up on shore, here's their solution. Grab them before they even make it there. Now, Madeira Beach has one of the highest concentrations of red tide in the Bay Area. The county hired contractors to work on land and on the water. Boaters are skimming fish out of the bay and workers are raking them off the sand. You may even see barges to reduce the number of times boats have to come on shore to dump the load of dead fish.
As the high roller shrimping boat makes it back to shore,
We actually caught them in a couple of hours.
Buddy Knight is hauling a much different catch than he's used to.
We had to run a couple of hours to get to where they were at.
Thousands of pounds of dead fish fill his boat, victims of red tide, carrying a rather smelly stench with them. A few miles off the coast of Pinellas County, Sky Fox captured the line of dead fish floating in the water.
It's pretty much just a tide line. They get bunched up in that tide line, but some of them are scattered kind of all over.
Pinellas County's plan is to scoop the dead fish up away from shore before they have the chance of washing up on the beaches. It's a hard task and one that's being supplemented with workers in smaller boats patrolling waterways and
are going about 100 yards in length before they're filling their nets. So we're working to get barges out there to them so they can load the fish in the barge and keep them out there.
Pinellas County hired DRC Emergency Services through a state grant for the cleanup. They've been preparing for weeks after seeing what was happening in Manatee and Sarasota counties.
We've known we would probably get hit. We just didn't know the effect and the timeline.
On land, they have crews raking and cleaning up the beach by hand. Pinellas County hopes by cleaning it up early, visitors won't be turned away completely.
We want to get it cleaned up, kind of just get over it. You know, hopefully we don't have to suffer what the South counties did for as long. Hopefully it's real quick. We get a small effect from it and it moves on or just goes away.
When the rain stopped falling earlier this year, many Afghans knew that trouble was coming. But they never imagined that the subsequent drought would be so bad they'd be forced to leave their homes to survive. The UN says in the first week of September, 120,000 displaced people arrived in Kala Inau, the provincial capital of Baghdis province. Others ended up in this camp for displaced people in neighboring Herat.
I'm a widow with 2 children. We came here because we were starving. The drought destroyed our crops of wheat. The land is too dry to grow anything.
Reduced snowfall and scarce rains in northwest Afghanistan have caused the drought disaster. There's a shortage of drinking water and grazing land for cattle. The UN says 250,000 Afghans have abandoned their homes so far this year in search of water. That's 5 times the number displaced by fighting between government forces and Taliban and ISIL fighters during the same period. More than 2 million people are at risk of not having enough to eat. The UN says $115 million is needed to help those affected.
We've now got 250,000 people who have been displaced, almost certainly because of the drought, and this is the number that we thought we would see by the end of this year. So we're currently revising our figures, but my main message is the situation's extremely serious and we need to act faster now.
Many families in the camps are surviving on a single meal a day. Many get by on just bread and water.
We've been here for 4 or 5 months, and as you can see, no one has helped us. Life is miserable. We have no flour, no sugar, nothing.
The UN and its partners are planning to deliver 13,000 tons of food to 600,000 people in the coming weeks. But reaching these relatively remote provinces is another challenge they'll face.
Pope Francis has ordered an investigation of an American bishop accused of sexual misconduct with adults and accepted his resignation. That's according to the Vatican and US church officials. It comes as the Pope was meeting with American Catholic Church leaders to discuss the fallout from the scandal and demands from an archbishop that the pontiff should step down.
As the Pope recently said, we abandon the little ones. And that's what this meeting is all about. It's about making sure the people who should be protecting children are not guilty of abusing them.
This article reveals the results of a study on sexual abuse in the German church. Between 1946 and 2014, there were over 3,000 victims of sexual abuse, mostly male victims, and over half of those were under 14. Confidence in the church in the United States, Chile, Australia and Ireland, where the scandal has hit hardest, as well as in other countries, have plummeted. The Catholic Church in Germany acknowledged a depressing and shameful legacy of sexual abuse on Wednesday after a leaked study says clerics had abused thousands of children over a 70-year period.
The FDA said today that vaping by teenagers has reached epidemic levels. Anna Werner now on the government's plans to crack down on e-cigarettes.
Industry must step up to this problem.
FDA Commissioner Scott Gottlieb is stepping up the pressure, telling 5 companies they have 60 days to submit plans to keep e-cigarettes out of teens' hands or face the possibility of the FDA pulling flavored products, which experts say appeal to teens, off the market.
I'm deeply disturbed by what I see as an epidemic of nicotine use among teenagers.
The most popular product by far, the Juul e-cigarette. Since April, the FDA has been examining Juul's advertising. Critics say an earlier marketing campaign that featured young people in groups with bright colors echoed past campaigns by big tobacco companies. In an interview earlier this year, Juul executive Ashley Gould denied it.
I will take the criticism that we should have known. I will take that criticism. But we know now we're working very hard and we are committed.
Data from Nielsen shows Juul e-cigarettes hold over 72% of the market. Matt Myers with the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids is skeptical that purely voluntary efforts by industry will work.
FDA's announcement has the potential to be a dramatic sea change, but only if FDA itself now follows this up with mandatory rules to require tobacco companies to fundamentally change how they're operating.
Well, Juul says tonight it will work proactively with FDA in response to its request and is committed to preventing underage use of its products. Jeff, retail sales for e-cigarettes are expected to reach $3.8 billion by the end of this year.
Liberal Hollywood director Michael Moore truly believes it's possible for President Trump to be the last president ever. Watch this.
You really think that?
I think it's possible, absolutely. I think that we have someone in the White House who has no respect for the rule of law, who dislikes democracy by an incredible degree.
The anti-Trump filmmaker making those comments on MSNBC while promoting his new film, Fahrenheit 11/9.
Обращаюсь сейчас к российским военнослужащим. Наш долг перед нашей страной и Родиной в том, чтобы быть готовыми отстоять суверенитет, безопасность и национальные интересы нашей страны.
国家随行另一个很重要的任务，即在欧亚大陆。
По приказу Верховного Главнокомандующего Вооруженными силами Российской Федерации, бригадный генерал Джафар Канцелер.